So we're wrapping up another precept here. Today's wrap-up day, yeah, for that whole area of speaking, mindful speaking and listening. Yeah, we've all mastered that now, and we'll move on. I say that every time, and of course, all of these areas are they're journeys. They're really journeys to in the direction of more skillful speaking, journeys toward deeper listening. And this whole area of speaking and listening, boy, it's so important, isn't it? We review it. What's to review? All we have to do is really take a look at some of the things that we've most regretted in our lives. Usually it's connected with speech. Usually it's connected with impulsive speech, harsh speech, from self or from other, you know? Speech is very powerful. If you think about who the difficult people are in your life, and hopefully there aren't too many, they probably got into that category, so to speak, based on speech, at least partly, right? Speech is it's really, really a bit one for us. Oh yeah, yeah. Some of the things I regret, it's speech. It's speech, a little bit too impulsive. I didn't really want to say it. I didn't really want to say it in that way. If I'd only paused for another minute, it would have come out differently, you know? Hmm. And the and listening, listening is such a big one. It's such a big one. And I love that when the Buddha talks about the training in all these areas, and we're including speech and listening here. He says, most people have untrained minds in these areas. He doesn't say they're bad people, you know. He doesn't say, well, aren't we terrible listeners or terrible speakers? He just says the mind has not been trained in these areas. And part of the humility in these practices, in all of them, is beginning to see not that we're totally untrained. We've been trained in a lot of areas in our life to get to where we are now. A lot of training has happened in a lot of areas. Most of us are potty trained. We've learned to walk. We've learned to walk for the most part without bumping into things. You know, you know. And I mean, I'm only kidding here. We've learned our multiplication tables. We've learned a lot, and to get to move through the world, we really have to get here. To get here. But what these practices highlight to us and mirror to us and invite us to take a closer look at is the areas in which we simply have not been trained. And they're all trainable if we turn our attention there. If we say, oh, yeah, this is an area where I'm not so trained, and I'd like to do more of that for my sake and for others. Yeah. It's just that we don't have a lot of training. We can talk until we're blue in the face about skillful speech, but we're still only so good at it, right? We're still a little impulsive. We're still a little short. We're still a little speedy. We're still a little speedy, aren't we? In our speech. We fill up space quickly, quickly. And of course we're speedy in speech because we're speedy in general. When we talk about the biggest hindrance for all of us, of all the mind states that are most challenging for us, what's number one? Restlessness, right? You know that. In settling, you see how challenging it is to really settle, right? Right? So we're not going to be settled in our speech either, for the most part, not in a big way. We're going to be a little restless, a little restless in our speech, right? Yeah. And how are we supposed to be? How are we supposed to be deep listeners when we haven't really done any training in being deep listeners? We like to think we're all good listeners. Yeah. Just like we like to think that we're all really mindful. Before you started practicing mindfulness, you hear people say this, oh yeah, I know mindfulness. I'm pretty mindful. You're pretty mindful until you practice mindfulness. And then you see how mindful you're not. You begin to see, oh my goodness. That's why people stop. It's right away. It's like, I'm right. There's so much agitation in there. There's so much upheaval in there, and listening. How are we supposed to be good listeners if we've never really practiced to listen? Right? Our listening is so much about, oh yeah, I hear you. I'm already planning what I'm about to say to you. Oh yeah, that reminds me of oh yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Like, how often does that happen for us? Even if we don't do that, we're already actively thinking as we're listening for the most part, aren't we? Yeah, aren't we? Yeah, we're not trained to really just listen. We're not trained to listen. Yeah, a lot of our issues come not only from more impulsive speech, but also from not listening well, from not learning how to listen more. Susan and I do a relationship retreat, an online relationship retreat for people who are in a partnered relationship. We might do one at BCBS at some point, an online one. Get some practice in this. And what those retreats turn out to be, for the most part, are retreats in speaking and listening. And what we have found, and we've done a lot of couples therapy as well over our years as therapists, is the number one issue in relationships with people who've been together for a while is not listening very well to each other, not knowing how to deeply listen. Oh, I already know what you're going to say. I already know it. We habituate. There's a sense that we do that. We do this a lot of the time with a lot of people, but we do it a lot with the people who are close to us. I already know what you're going to say, and we stop learning how to listen, practicing. It's really about practicing listening. So a lot of what happens is we'll do these exercises with people, and the job for one person is just listen, and the other person just speak skillfully, knowing that that person is just going to listen. It sounds like baby talk, right? Except it's not, because the person can't listen very well. They'll be, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. It's actually hard for people to just sit and just make eye contact and just listen and not make any head motions, nodding motions, even interrupting. We're so young in listening, in just really listening, just really listening. One of the ways that you can practice listening skills, and this is why hearing is, apart from the breath, is my second favorite object in meditation, is to practice listening. So look, right now I'm going to ring this bell a couple of times, and I want you to close your eyes. Everybody just close your eyes, and I want you to listen all the way from the very beginning to the very end of this sound of this bell. Okay? And with the orientation to receive it, you know, listening takes nerves, not muscles. Yeah? And yet we listen sometimes like this, as if, as if, I, as if I have to go out to the sound. You know, it's just allowing the sound to come to you, yeah, and stay with it all the way through. I'm going to ring it twice. Okay, can you flip it back over? One of the things that I'll encourage you to do from time to time, if you don't already do it in your meditation, is just to listen to something. If you've got any kind of ambient sound out there going on and around, to just turn your to 100% just receiving in a listening way, because it's training to listen. Now you can try that with another person as well, just settling back. I always will listen to Dharma talks, and sometimes I'll invite people to consider with my eyes closed, because there's so much going on in listening. And when I close my eyes, I can really just listen, just receive the words. And then meanwhile, I also see my own reactions. There's always so much going on in there. So it's really just seeing this speaking skillfully, less impulsively. We want to pause before speaking, and we want to lean in more, or settle back more in our listening. They're really art forms and they're skill sets which will serve us so well in our lives and in our relationships. Yeah. And we're all young in that space. We're just untrained. We're all good people. We're still good people, as we'll often say, but we just have not trained a lot in these areas. And so in all these areas, we're in the same aquarium. We're all learning together. We're all growing together to be better, more skillful speakers, and more deep listeners. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So onward, and thank you so much. And we'll meditate now together. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So as usual, we'll open up first. And I'm beginning to slow it down. When you're ready, lightly closing the eyes and maybe still moving a little bit, orienting toward comfortable posture. And the breath has more room and more ease. We invite that. We cultivate that. It doesn't just happen. There is this intentional thrust, this intentional orientation to our practice. We create settling, we cultivate settling and ease. When we learn how to do that, we train in this act of settling and calming. It's one of these areas that we also do not have much training in at all, is learning how to settle our nervous systems. So this is also practice for that. Because the breath is very much implicated in regulating the nervous system. And so to the degree that we see this as an important part of setting up our meditation, but also a training in and of itself, a wellness training. Then when the mind wanders away into thinking, which is where it usually wanders, into stories, into planning, and into thinking, we become more willing to return to this training, the training of settling and calming. And when the mind does wander away, and you notice that, uh, returning to the moment, to the breath, with care and with interest. As if there's no place you'd rather be, nothing you'd rather be doing right now. The last few minutes, settling back, softening and allowing. Thank you, thank you.